Hey, thanks for having us, guys. Hello and welcome to the panel on Bitcoin adoption around the world. Great song to introduce for us. Today I'm honored to have with me on stage a pre-recorded academics and practitioners. The panel was created by the University of Florida European Studies grant and their unique network put together panelists from the University of Maryland and Netherlands AI Coalition. Oh, there we go. My name is James Ruffer. I've been coming to this conference since the beginning. It's an amazing conference. Mo has done an amazing job and is grateful to be back in person and see everybody. I own a company called Web3 Devs. We're a boutique company, DeFi, NFT, Web3 obviously, and a lot of the technology that's used today has come from us. And I'm joined on stage today with Marloes and virtually with Tej. And so Marloes, I'm sure you can do a lot better intro than I can, so I'm going to let you do your intro.
Yes, thank you. It's my first time at this conference, but I really like the crowd. It's a great mix of people, and I really enjoyed talking with a lot of you yesterday. My name is Marloes Pomp. I started my career within the Dutch government. I trained the management teams, directors in new technologies. Not only blockchain technology, but also artificial intelligence, quantum, and so on. And in 2014, I started with an introduction on blockchain technologies in my classes. And they didn't like it. They told me, we really appreciate your classes, and it's really great that you built a bridge between the tech communities and the government. But blockchain, we are not sure what to do with it. It's too fake. Maybe you can skip that part. We like artificial intelligence, we like IoT, but maybe you can skip blockchain. And I myself was really enthusiastic about decentralization and the opportunities of crypto and blockchain, also for the government and for society in general. And that's why I suggested in 2015 to start pilot projects within the government to get a better understanding of how this technology can be used. Well, that exploded a bit. Within a year, I had 35 pilot projects within the government. Every ministry did a pilot project, but also the cities, like the city of Amsterdam. So I learned a lot. There were no blockchain companies or crypto companies at that moment, so I had to find the experts online at the universities and build teams between the government and the developers. After a while, the government launched the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. It was in 2017. And then some of the pilot projects became bigger use cases within the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, which is a public-private collaboration between the government and universities and corporates and startups, of course. And at this moment, I'm an advisor on DAOs and the metaverse within the Dutch Blockchain Coalition. And we have a similar public-private collaboration for artificial intelligence. And there I'm responsible for the international collaboration.
Yeah, that was much better than what I would have done. Thank you so much for that. And we're going to let Tej do his own intro as well.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Tej Anand, and I'm coming to you from the University of Maryland in College Park, where I am a clinical professor in the Smith School of Business. I started working on blockchain in 2016 by creating applications to solve operational issues related to transparency in healthcare. Since 2018, I have added educating businesses and non-technical people about the benefits of blockchain as an important component of my work. I also conduct research with my students in the areas of governance, multi-party computation, and differential privacy. My goal today on this panel is to talk to you about the global adoption of currencies. From my vantage point, there are two challenges that we need to urgently overcome. These two challenges are rapidly pushing us away from the original ethos of Bitcoin, the decentralization of power and the creation of a currency which by definition has to serve as a medium of exchange. The first challenge relates to the forces of centralization that are ascendant today. Examples of these forces include exchanges and marketplaces. These forces create points of failure and control that we are trying to leave behind. Left unchecked, these forces for centralization have the potential to make blockchain and cryptocurrencies the realm of the elite, who will most likely enrich themselves and manipulate others. Our world will become like the internet, dominated by a few centralized platforms reaping the outsized benefits of monopolistic network effects. To counter the forces of centralization, we need global education so that individuals can be their own peer nodes, be their own custodians, safeguard their own wallets and their own keys. We need to make our software easy to acquire, set up, install, and use. We also need to make software changes a rarity. The mantra of be first, even if it is crappy, is not for us. We also need to make our software run on commodity hardware that most people are likely to already have or can acquire cheaply. And we need to remove all advantages associated with special purpose hardware to balance the playing field. If we do this, our current exchanges and marketplaces will end up being peer nodes without disproportionate power. They might also not need to be regulated. The second challenge is the quasi-conversion of cryptocurrencies and tokens into assets with volatile value. This volatility takes us away from our goal of being a medium of exchange. Who would want to exchange anything that they feel is going to keep rising in value? Shouldn't I hold something that is going to keep rising in value? While counterintuitive, I feel volatility is created by the lack of exchange, and the hesitation to exchange is created by volatility. A vicious cycle that usually ends with a meltdown or a crash. One of the solutions to this conundrum is to redouble our efforts to spark exchange. One way we could do that would be to focus our implementation efforts on autonomous blockchain networks in smaller communities or ecosystems that exist naturally and might be local or geographically proximate. These communities conduct a majority of their transactions among themselves. We can learn from the successful adoption of applications such as Venmo. In this scenario, volatility outside the ecosystem becomes less of a concern. In any case, to overcome the perception of volatility and encourage adoption, we can start by pegging these currencies to the most widely accepted national currency in the local community. There are many examples of such natural and local communities: healthcare, real estate, some retail, personal services, home maintenance services readily come to mind. Keep in mind, these parties exchange values among themselves but do not necessarily trust each other. So we still need to have a computationally robust consensus mechanism such as proof of work. However, we need governance that discourages participants who are not participating in value exchange. One way to do this would be to do away or reduce block rewards, as well as place limits on transaction fees. The philosophy is that participating in exchange is what adds value to all parties. We already have good research and engineering in progress, both in layer 1 and layer 2 protocols that will give us the transactions per second throughput that we will need for these natural local communities. We need some workable approaches for how participants can maintain a reserve to promote stability yet not have economic resources locked up and being unproductive. Our current volatility is a distraction. Let's keep focused on the work at hand. We can leverage the good work already completed and in progress to achieve our original worthwhile ethos.
That was great.
I love his smell.
That was great, yeah. And I think what I love about this conference, and you've heard it a couple times of people saying that, we're preaching to the choir, we're talking to our community, but, things like that, and this particular conference really brings me back to my roots. And the things that he talks about kind of reminds us that, hey, even though we're off in the metaverse, we're off doing NFTs, there's still a lot of we're still at the beginning of this, right? And we have to sometimes take a step back and remember that industries still need to be educated and all of that. And we had lunch and we talked a little bit, and I said you said something that made my head explode. And I'm gonna say it here because I think it might make some head explodes here, is your government actually gave you money and supported you to do research. Like, wow, like how did, really? Can you kind of explain that methodology and how that actually works?
Yes, of course I can. And for me, it's, yeah, I'm used to it. So I was surprised. Yeah, that's, yeah, maybe it's not normal. Well, in the Netherlands, the government, they selected a few key technologies, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, data sharing, and they selected these technologies to invest in because they believe it's good for the economy, but it's also needed to solve issues in healthcare, for the energy transition, and so on. And in the Netherlands, we are used to public-private collaboration. And it really means public-private collaboration. So it's not that the government sets the agenda because they provide the subsidy or they invest the money. It's really a collaboration between knowledge institutes, the corporates, and the government itself. Most public-private collaborations, like the Dutch Blockchain Coalition and the Netherlands AI Coalition, it's a membership model. So it's an initiative from the government, but yeah, all these organizations become member of this coalition, and together they set the agenda. So within the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, together we discuss about what are the topics we should do research on, or what are the use cases that we should start, or yeah, whatever. And the government is almost always active in whatever we are doing. So for example, we are working on a project for mobility as a service. Then the Ministry of Infrastructure is part of this working group. Or if we are discussing new policy making on central digital bank currency, the Ministry of Finance is involved. Or if we want to start, for example, a project on we are working on a passport for enterprises, then the tax authority is involved. So we are glad that we have an active government, and that they don't want to set the agenda, so that we are free to explore whatever we want.
And do you feel like there's that healthy relationship between commercial enterprise and the government, or?
Yes, and the government asked the Dutch Blockchain Coalition to do the project management or to coordinate it, because then they can have their own role. So for example, there's a project between the Port of Rotterdam and the Port of Singapore, and they work on an electronic bill of lading, and that's a document which proves who owns the goods in a container. And now it's a paper-based document, and they want to make it digital, blockchain-based, like an NFT, but for the goods in a container. But we have to change the law for this. because in the Dutch law, it's mentioned that it should be a paper-based document. So then we work closely together with the Ministry of Justice and the Port of Rotterdam and all the experts, to make a proposal for this law. But the government itself, they can play their own role. When you have this neutral coalition where all the parties are working together. So I think this model, in the Netherlands works quite well. You can have your own opinion, also the government, but it's,
but then the government takes it over, squashes it, and you never hear from it again? Or do you actually do something with the project? You're going to blow my mind in this answer too, right?
Of course, we don't start these projects as a hobby. The intention is to implement these projects or to have new policy or new regulation. And sometimes there is a struggle, of course. So recently we had some discussion about the regulation. Bitonic, they went to court because the Dutch Central Bank requested that the crypto companies ask a lot of information of their clients to do the know your customer, know your client process. And they requested more than the traditional banks required from their clients. So they went to court, and the court said that the crypto companies were correct, that it should be a similar process as the banks. So then sometimes there's a little bit of friction, but we have these discussions, and then there's a settlement. And
so standardizations are equally, they basically force it equally on all the communities.
Yes.
That's quite amazing. Wow.
And also at the European level, the member states, they work closely together within the European Blockchain Partnership. And there we also have working groups like for policy making, for the technical, we have technical working groups. They work at the European Blockchain Service Infrastructure. You can find all the documentation online, and also they are testing with European wallets. And this European Blockchain Service Infrastructure is meant for governmental services between the member states. So there are a lot of experiments, but also there's a close collaboration between the industry, between the governments and the knowledge institutes.
So let me recap this. Your government plays friendly with you. They actually encourage you, and they actually publish all this information, and they use it themselves?
Yes.
That's amazing. Wow.
That's how it should work, I think.
Yeah. What other proof of concepts? You talked about the customs with the Singapore. What about like the bigger tech companies? And do these proof of concepts always have a new foundation come in, or do you get to move from technology to technology?
Yeah, the stakeholders, for example, there's a project for mobility as a service where the Ministry of Infrastructure is involved, but also a lot of mobility providers, but also a lot of companies, they offer services for the payments or for the infrastructure, for data sharing. So they're all working together in these working groups, and together they decide which pilots do they want to start, and for each pilot, who is the technology provider. So it's up to them, but that's also helpful. So we can test a lot of different technologies, but it's also open for every technology provider to make an offer and to join these projects.
So is it the same people every time, or is it actually open? Wow.
Yes, it's open, and it depends on the use case and the community, but the stakeholders can choose.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, how do the stakeholders actually get involved in learning the new innovation and staying on top of things in the Netherlands?
Well, it also depends, but for example, we now have a huge energy project focusing on decentralized energy solutions. there, the government asked us, we are working on a new law and we want to make it possible that also decentral energy solutions are possible. Can you provide us with some advice? Then we reached out to the energy providers, to companies like Shell, and we had a lot of discussions, knowledge sharing, and then they started the first pilot projects, and then they figured out we are missing one organization or one stakeholder. We invite them, so it's a process.
And these proof of concepts and these people that get together, it sounds like there's opportunity for new startups. Do any of these actually become new startups? And do you have maybe some examples of things that have launched out of?
Yes. There are a lot of startups are also a member of the Dutch Blockchain Coalition, and we have meetings every 2 weeks where they, startups can present themselves to the to all the other members. So there's a lot of matchmaking there. But of course, also the pilot projects or the use cases, they do have spin-offs. An example is we call it the career wallets. It's an experiment with the Ministry of Education and also the European Blockchain Partnership, where we want to make it available for students or employees to collect all their credentials in a wallet, and when they switch between one organization and another, they can bring their own data and get control of this data. Well, as a spin-off, a lot of startups came up with solutions to build this wallet. There's a spin-off. It's from the Rabobank. It's a bank in the Netherlands. They've built an app, Data Keeper, which can be used for this use case. But there are other solutions as well. So it's also an when you have the standards and the agreements of how it should work, then a lot of companies or startups can offer solutions.
Sounds like it makes it a lot easier going through something like that rather than trying to do it yourself and then try to backtrack learning it.
Yeah.
Here in the States, I feel we have the opposite happening. Like we have the DAOs, we have the layer 1 networks that are all kind of trying to outdo each other, so they have grant accelerators and treasuries to where they try to attract startups that way, right? So, Algorand will have this, push, huge marketing event, try to take all the developers, try to do startups and try to launch it that way. And there has been some success there, but once that treasury kind of runs out, it's like, what's going to happen after that? So it's kind of interesting to hear how different nations and countries are doing it, and it sounds like you've had some pretty good success that way. It sounds, during lunch, it sounds like you also had some personal success because you've kind of stepped away from that a little bit and got into a Dutch DAO. Are we allowed to talk about that?
Oh, yes, sure. Well, it's an exciting time in the crypto world and the blockchain world because a lot of solutions become more mature, but also new concepts come to life, like the DAOs, and I'm really enthusiastic about these types of organizations. And I talked a lot with experts in the Netherlands about this new structure. And we all have the same problem. There are so many developments going on, the NFTs, the DeFi, the Metaverse, the Web 3.0, and it's the play to earn, the learn to earn concepts. It's too hard to catch up by yourself. When I started in 2014, it was doable, but now it's not. And we all felt the same problem, and so we thought, how can we build an incentive to share knowledge between the experts in all these areas? So we invited an expert in the gaming industry, someone in, there's an NFT community in the Netherlands, which is quite active, so we asked the best people from them. And we want to bring them together in a Dutch DAO. It's an investment DAO, because I thought when we have this incentive to invest together, then we can schedule these annual meetings or weekly meetings to share this knowledge, and hopefully, yeah, it's a good way to.
And all of this came from the research behind it of bringing all these people together, and you felt, hey, we should just keep going with this, kind of like basically your own startup, which is a fascinating.
Yes, but that's also, I think, nice to learn how it's not my startup. It's from us together, and that's also in the discussions, but also in the way of working or how to convince the rest. It's really nice.
Now, right?
Yes,
yeah.
but it's really nice to figure out how does this actually work.
And you guys did you were allowed to basically do a whole bunch of research on what DAOs were. And so when you went through that process, how did you basically select the Dutch DAO?
Also having these discussions with each other was really helpful to figure out what kind of a DAO do I want to be, how should it work, which kinds of governance models are there. That was really helpful, but we ended up with, we want to make something similar as the Lao DAO. It's also an investment DAO, and I think it's a good model for what we want to do by ourselves. But having all these discussions and do this research, we already learned a lot of it. But we're still at the starting point of this DAO, DAO organizations. And what's also interesting that there are a lot of new startups building services for DAOs, and I expect that, and they are building services for the metaverse and for the Web 3.0, and I expect we will see the rise of the new Apples, Facebook, Googles between those startups and companies. So it's also really interesting to figure out which services, which startups are there, and which one will succeed, and to test it by yourself. And there are a lot of new jobs within these DAOs, but also within the startups building stuff for these new type of organizations. But you also see completely different communication and marketing strategies, or how they work with talent, or do the talent management, or build fellowship structures. So there's a lot to learn within this world.
Sounds fascinating. I want to thank you so much for coming up here and educating us on what's happening around the world in Bitcoin. I'd also like to thank the CES, the University of Florida, for putting us up here. I'd like to thank Mo and Lindsay, and that's our time. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, panel.